Bom dia a todos. É um prazer estar aqui. Bem-vindos à 15ª edição da Expert XP. E hoje eu tenho o prazer de conversar com uma das maiores vozes climáticas do mundo, ele que foi vice-presidente dos Estados Unidos, já serviu no Congresso americano, tem vários projetos aqui ainda em desenvolvimento no Brasil e também foi ganhador do Prêmio Nobel da Paz em 2007. Então, Mr. Al Gore, a round of applause, please.
Wow. Obrigado. Thank you. What a crowd.
Very special crowds just to hear you speak today. So, Mr. Gore, what is a true honor it is to have you here with us today. Welcome to Brazil, welcome to São Paulo, and welcome to XP, Expert XP 2025. This is the world's largest investment forum, and we're very happy to have you here. Your biography speaks for itself. I could keep on talking for the rest of the morning, but I'll just say some key highlights. You are former Vice President of the United States. You are the founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, founding partner and chairman of Generation Investment Management. You served in the U.S. Congress for over 15 years. You are a best-selling author and the voice behind the landmark documentary An Inconvenient Truth and An Inconvenient Sequel, and both helped shape the global conversation on climate change. In 2007, you were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize together with the IPCC for raising awareness on the climate crisis and inspiring action across the globe. We are incredibly honored to have you here. Welcome. And to everyone, to this big crowd, thank you for listening to this important theme and conversation. So let's dive into this important conversation.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for your very warm welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to be back in Brazil. Thank you very much for greeting me warmly. I was here in Brazil 33 years ago for the very the beginning of all the climate negotiating process with what we call the Earth Summit in Rio. And now I have been back here many times. I will make 3 trips here just in the next few months. And Generation Investment Management is not visiting and then leaving again. We are staying. We have opened an office here in São Paulo. My partner, Eduardo Mufarej, and he is here with Rafael Falcioni. And I want to thank XP. When I first started talking with Edu, he started telling me more about XP. Of course, it's known worldwide, but I want to thank you, Luiza and Guilherme Benchimol, and Gustavo Pires, and the leadership of XP. So thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you for coming here. So let's start. You talked about generation and how you're now expanding and deepening engagements here in the region in Brazil. So why do you believe Latin America and Brazil in particular plays such a critical role in solving the global climate crisis? And talk a little bit more about how generation and all of your projects that are now expanding their footprint here in Brazil, how they will interact with this role that Brazil and Latin America can play in the global climate crisis.
From my friends in Brazil, I sometimes get the impression that Brazilians are not as fully aware as the rest of the world of how central Brazil is for the dialogue about climate. Brazil is one of the, well, with the US, one of the 2 largest economies in the Western Hemisphere, one of the great nations of the world, and yet it has 90% of all the electric power coming from carbon-free renewable sources. The rest of the world would like to be like Brazil in that sense, particularly. And the debate over how to solve the climate crisis, and I'll come back to that, is focusing more and more on the role of land use and land use conversion. And Brazil is at the center of the global debate on how to sequester carbon in the topsoil, how to slow down and stop the burning and clearing of great forests. The Amazon is the greatest of all, and how to do all of these things profitably. So Generation Investment Management is a firm, an investment firm that I co-founded 22 years ago. And we focus on sustainability. And we invest everything through the lens of sustainability, which leads some people to think, oh, if you're going to invest in sustainability, you're not getting your top returns. No, we have exceeded the benchmark. And over 20 years, according to Mercer, of the 600 firms in our category globally in investing, we have had the #1 or #2 record over 20 years. So the future is oriented more toward investing in a sustainable way. The global economy is changing dramatically. In some ways, the world is catching up with Brazil on that figure about how much electricity comes from renewables. You have so much hydroelectric power, but now the cheapest electricity is solar. Solar plus batteries is taking over the world energy markets. And so investing always involves looking into the future and seeing where the investment is going to be next year or 5 years from now. And the world is shifting toward a sustainable economy. Last year, if you look at all of the new electricity installed worldwide, what percent was from solar and wind and renewable sources? The answer is 93%. It's the cheapest electricity in the history of the world, including, as I said, here in Brazil. And nature, the role of nature is now becoming central to this conversation, because there's 3 times as much carbon in the first meter of topsoil than there is in all of the trees and vegetation in the entire world. So how we treat that carbon and how we put more carbon back into the soil is one of the secrets.
So still talking about the role of nature, Brazil holds one of the biggest assets that we can have, which is our biodiversity. We have 60% of the Amazon rainforest here in Brazil, but it seems that we are not fully realizing all this potential. So how can we actually translate all this natural capital potential into long-term opportunities, into economic growth, and how can nature-based solutions become business opportunities for investors, for entrepreneurs, and for companies?
Well, thank you for asking the question, Luiza. And I know that you and your colleagues in the research division of XP focus on these things all the time, and we have learned from you in our dialogue. So thank you for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing. Actually, the role of nature is becoming central in so many ways. There is an old way of thinking that focuses on just extracting value from the land and not even thinking about what the land is like after you cut the trees or burn the trees. But by taking care of the land, there are more sustainable profits that can continue to come year after year after year. And where biodiversity is concerned, of course, the revolution in the science of biotechnology has long since put the focus on all of the unique genetic formulations that are found inside the life forms in the Amazon and in biodiversity. And more scientists are focusing on what Mother Nature has created over billions of years that we have not been able to create. So nature is becoming central to this challenge of solving the climate crisis. And by the way, before I go further, let me just make this point. The climate crisis is the most serious challenge humanity has ever faced. Just think, here in Sao Paulo, 40 degrees in October. These things are new. Look at what happened in Porto Alegre last year with the downpours, the rain bombs. These are happening all over the world. It just happened last week in my country, not only in Texas where all those children were killed, but in New Mexico, in New York City, in New Jersey. And every day, all around the world, these events are getting worse and worse and worse. And it is because we are filling up the sky with heat-trapping pollution. And you know, the Earth is surrounded by this very thin blue shell that's only 5 to 7 kilometers thick, but that's where we're putting all of this heat-trapping global warming pollution. And now the future of our civilization is at risk unless we can cut back on that. The good news is the smart investors and smart business leaders are finding ways to make money by investing in the transition to renewable energy, sustainable land use, and the kind of businesses that don't steal from the future for short-term profits in the present.
So talking about these opportunities and the role of the business community in the climate crisis, Brazil has, you mentioned that 88% of our energy matrix is composed of renewables. The global average is around 25%. So we are uniquely positioned when we're talking about our emissions profile and also on our energy competitiveness advantages. And we can produce several emerging technologies on a very competitive scale when we compare with our global partners. We can produce, for example, green hydrogen, low carbon steel. We can compete for sustainable data infrastructure. So all these emerging technologies poses an important opportunity for us. How do you see and how can Brazil translate this competitiveness advantage into actually business opportunities for the business community sitting in this room?
Well, I think a gathering like this is a good place to start in learning from your peers and learning from the research that XP does. Brazil is now emerging as a center of this new focus in the global economy. You mentioned green steel. Let me use that as one example. Just Climate, which is part of Generation Investment Management, based here in Sao Paulo, along with London and San Francisco. We led the largest private placement 2 years ago in green steel, a company called Stegra, and it takes hydro to make green hydrogen and then uses the green hydrogen in place of fossil fuels in order to make green steel. And now there is a growing demand worldwide for green steel because customers want low carbon products. They want to be part of the solution to the climate crisis. Well, Brazil has a better opportunity than practically any nation in the world to be a leader in green steel. Similarly, there are new green cement technologies that are going to be the standard years from now. Early investors have an opportunity to take advantage of this move in the global economy toward green steel and green cement. And new, better forms of agriculture that don't rely on slash and burn, but are more sustainable year after year, that put carbon in the soil and make the soil more fertile. These are opportunities for investing that Generation Investment Management and Just Climate is focused on right here in Sao Paulo.
So let's talk a little bit more about how Generation will allocate its funds. 80%, we were talking before on the backstage that 80% will be allocated here in Brazil of the funds. So how will the projects be selected and what kinds of industries are you looking for?
Well, we look across the board and it will be allocated by our investment committee that draws on the expertise that you have and other great investment analysts here in Brazil. And of course, it's a difficult process, and I've been doing it for 22 years now, and I find it absolutely fascinating, but it's very hard work. And one of the keys is to look longer term. And of course, all investors know that the best way to invest is long term. Many investors focus on the short term. We focus on the long term, and it is over a multi-year period that sustainability profits are to be found.
So talking still about climate and business, you often talk about the false dichotomy that businesses have to choose between sustainability and social responsibility and profitability. So what we're always saying here at our at our research ESG team is that you don't have to choose between the two. Actually, climate and the energy transition is much more than a moral imperative. It's actually a compelling business opportunity. But in this room full of investors, of entrepreneurs, of business leaders, what message would you tell them to reinforce this message that climate is actually a business opportunity, and it can drive long-term resilience, it can create value, and it can create business opportunities as well?
Yeah, great question, and it's important to reemphasize this because many people have an old way of thinking about investing in a sustainable way. They think, oh, well, it's a good thing to do because it'll make the world a better place, and so what if we lose some of the profits we might make if we invested in a dirty way? That's an old way of thinking. That's not what we do. There's no charity involved in this. We want to make a profit for our investors that is higher than the benchmark. We want to not just we want to avoid losing money for sure, but we want to outperform the benchmarks, and we believe the best way to do that is by finding these opportunities that open up the future, that invest in a sustainable future in a very profitable way. And again, over in the 20-year record that has been measured for generation, over that 20-year period, we have finished number 2, and in some cases, in some years, number 1 out of all 600 firms in our category.
And the generations penetration and footprints here in Brazil, what do you expect to accomplish in the long run?
Well, this is a big part of the future for generation investment management. And our franchise, Just Climate, which is based here, is focused 80% on Brazil. We will also be investing globally in global opportunities from the analytical work that is based here in Brazil. This is a big part of our future, and I think it's a big part of the world's future. You know, the Northern Hemisphere has its own history and perspectives, and over time, Brazilians are used to this mind frame in the global North. But it's a new day, and all of our challenges, all of our opportunities, all of our difficulties really have to be defined and seen in the global context now. And Brazil is the center of the global conversation on the role of nature in business and industry, in climate, in the future of the world. Brazil has 90%, 88% renewable power. It has the richest store of biodiversity in the entire world. It has the mix of opportunities that are perfect for the green industries of the future, and generation investment management has moved here to stay because we believe the future is going to unfold right here in Brazil.
That puts a lot of responsibility here in our industries in Brazil, and I think I can speak for every Brazilian we appreciate generation choosing Brazil and believing in Brazil's potential in all this climate agenda. And still speaking of Brazil's climate agenda, we will have in November COP30. So COP30 is the UN's annual climate conference. It happens every year, and this year, for the first time, it will be hosted here in Brazil. We did have Eco 92 that Mr. Gore was talking about, that it was his first time, I think, in Rio, or at least he attended the conference 33 years ago in 1992. And in November, we will hold COP30. After this panel, we will have XP's institutional director and the governor of Pará will be here so that we talk a little bit more. But what are your expectations for COP30? Will you be here at COP30? What do you expect the conference to accomplish? What is the importance of hosting this conference in Brazil, in the Amazon region? And what kind of opportunity can Brazil leverage so that we can actually transform the opportunity of hosting a COP conference and translate this into business opportunities, into economic growth for the region, not only for the Amazon region, but for the whole country?
Yes, well, thank you very much. Of course, yes, I will be in Belém. I will also be back here in Sao Paulo and in Rio. I want to welcome the governor of Pará State, who has already joined us here. You will hear from him later. He's a friend, and we have met in the past. COP30 is a great opportunity for the world to focus again on how we can solve this climate crisis. Before COP30, I will be in Rio with a week-long training of grassroots climate activists with the Climate Reality Project. This will be the 5th training that I've had in Brazil over the last 20 years. I will be back in Sao Paulo, and I'm looking forward to Belém. I think that Brazil hosting COP30 makes this a full circle moment, coming back to the nation that began this whole process 33 years ago. I was a U.S. Senator in those years and chaired the U.S. Senate delegation that came here. We have seen some progress, but not enough progress. And I want to emphasize how important it is to resist the influence of the fossil fuel industry, which has dominated the COP meetings all these years. It took 28 years before they even allowed the phrase fossil fuels to be mentioned in the COP process. 80% of the heat trapping pollution comes from the burning of fossil fuels. Today we'll put another 175 million tons of heat trapping pollution into that thin shell surrounding the Earth. And it stays there on average about 100 years per molecule. That's why it builds up and traps so much extra heat, equivalent to 750,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every day on the Earth. That's why the temperatures are getting so high. That's why it was 40 degrees in October here in this city. That's why we have changes to the ocean currents and the wind currents. That's why the fires have been so extensive. For 1 week last year, Sao Paulo had the worst air pollution of any city in the world because of the smoke from the fires. We have the same thing in the US, in San Francisco and in New York, the fires in Canada. This is the 3rd year in a row. And we're seeing it in Greece and Portugal and all over the world. Every night on the television news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. We see the floods and we see the droughts. Last year was the worst drought in history for many of the rivers in the Amazon. In Colombia, the Amazon lost 90% of its flow. And we are seeing these droughts and fires all over the world. We cannot continue to fill up the sky with heat-trapping pollution. So now, for us as human beings, for myself as a human being, it's a real challenge to think on a global basis and to realize that we human beings are now the most powerful force of nature. We have more of an impact than any other force of nature because we are so dependent on coal, oil, and methane gas. That's what's causing this crisis. More than 80% of it comes from fossil fuels. So COP30 must focus, I hope it will focus, most activists do, on reducing the burning of fossil fuels, as Brazil has already done. Yes, Brazil has Petrobras and oil development, but Brazil also is a model for a nation that gets almost 90% of its energy from renewable sources. That's what the world needs to do.
And talking about these extreme weather events, we were talking backstage that, for example, São Paulo I think it was last year, we had the worst air quality. We had terrible pollution, and this all affects public health. It affects us in ways that we don't even maybe imagine or reckon right now, but we will, like the price we will pay at some point, right? But the sense that we have is that there's a triggering point, an inflection point that maybe we are not there yet. I don't know if you feel this the same way.
I think we are getting close to a positive tipping point beyond which people will say, yes, we need to stop destroying humanity's future. It's insane. But we have to focus on the role of fossil fuels and the burning of fossil fuels. That's the crisis. But you know, these large fossil fuel corporations and the petrostates have a great deal of political power. They have tried to put themselves in control of the negotiating process. Same thing with the plastics negotiation, where we're filling up the ocean with plastics because that's the third biggest market for fossil fuels. 90% of it's fossil fuel. But we have to confront the political power of the fossil fuel companies that have taken too much control over policy making. It's true in my country. You know, the new presidential administration in my country, don't get me started. You've had a belly full here in Brazil. He just put 50% tariffs on Brazil. It's utterly insane, of course, and that probably won't last long, but who knows? You know, there's a bit of irrationality, a lot of irrationality. But they do what the fossil fuel companies tell them to do. And Brazil has an opportunity to stand up for humanity, for the future, and to say, we are not dependent on fossil fuels. 90% of our power is from renewable sources. We need all sources, and we will continue for a time to rely on some fossil fuels. Sure, of course, but we have to move as quickly as possible to the kind of energy profile that Brazil has already pioneered for the world, 80 to 90% renewable. That's where we need to go. And Brazil has an opportunity in hosting COP30 in Berlin to send that message to the entire world.
And I think Belém will also be a great opportunity for Brazil to position itself as a climate leadership in the global stage.
And let me add one thing, Luiza. When we look at what is happening in the world, for example, 93% of all the new electricity last year being renewable, as I said, where did the money come from? How did that happen, 93% renewable? 85% of all the money came from private investors, not from governments. Now, in some of the poor countries, most of it has to come from governments because investors shy away from developing economies. 2/3 of all the money that has come here in Brazil for the energy transition has come from private investors. You have a very healthy, very large, very robust investing sector here in Brazil. Globally, investors will be providing 80 to 85% of the money for the energy transition globally. But we need to find a pathway to accelerate that transition. We should have a price on carbon, of course, but the fossil fuel companies say, no, we won't allow that, and we have enough political power to put the politicians under our thumb and say, no, don't even think about it. But we need to move in a direction where investors can face a rational world where the price of pollution is reflected in the way the markets are operating. And it may be that a carbon border adjustment mechanism, such as the one Europe has, China's experimenting with it, that is something that should also be discussed here at COP30 in Brazil.
That's interesting. It's very interesting to see the role of the private sector, and I think the role of Catholic capital too, just like generation and its deepening engagement here in the country will play in actually developing and helping accelerate all these technologies. A lot of these technologies are still considered to be not very competitive because of their costs. They still tend to have very high cost. But what we see, for example, what happened with solar, as you mentioned, solar prices for photovoltaic panels, they went down incredibly in the last few years. Batteries, for example, lithium prices are also down, and they're making battery prices down too. So it's interesting to see the evolution of the industry. And as we were talking before, it's about making money too, right? It's about betting on the technology and of course with the science and with the technology itself, with the maturity, but making money from these technologies, right? And the role of catalytic capital, just like generation.
Yes, and in order to make money, it's important to get the clearest possible view of where the market is going, how the future is unfolding. That's why this conference is so famous worldwide. You learn about it here. And for many years, the fossil fuel industry has made predictions about the future that were completely wrong. They said solar photovoltaics will never be competitive. Well, it's now by far the cheapest source of electricity in world history. 91% of the renewables around the world are the cheapest in their regions. Solar electricity is the cheapest new source here in Brazil as well. There's only one technology that has come down in cost faster than solar photovoltaics, and that's utility scale batteries. And the combination of solar photovoltaics and battery storage is completely transforming the world of electricity. The same is true in transportation. Again, OPEC predicted for years electric vehicles don't have any future. They will never be competitive. Well, this last month in China, more than half of all new vehicles sold were electric vehicles. Within 5 years, more than 85%, 82% of all new vehicles sold in China will be electric vehicles. Already, if you take the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, which carry more people than four-wheelers around the world, more than half are already electric. Buses here in Sao Paulo are now becoming electric, same in Rio. So in transportation, electric vehicles powered by batteries are the future. So electricity generation, transportation, those are the two biggest markets. We're also seeing it now with the effort to replace petrochemicals and plastics that are polluting the entire world, and they're in our bodies, and that can't be good. And we're seeing in the hard-to-abate sectors like steel manufacturing, cement, we talked about that earlier, and agriculture. That is the future, and that is where Brazil is going to play, in my opinion, the most important role for the entire world.
So we have a lot of responsibility at COP30. And we also expect, we here at our team at ESG Research here at XP, we write a lot of analysis, we identify trends, we see how ESG dynamics shape the market and how they may anticipate investment opportunities. And what we think about COP30 is that it will be a great opportunity to reunite and gather a lot of different people from all over the world and businesses from all over the world and from different sectors. And besides, of course, the role of the fossil fuel industry in the climate crisis, we also expect a lot of talk on carbon markets, on natural capital, on biodiversity. So let's see how it will unfold. It seemed very far away, and now we're only 3 months, 4 months, and it's going to be November, and it's going to be COP. And we hope to see some progress too in the conference. Another topic that I think it's very important when we talk about the climate crisis, especially when we think about Latin America and Brazil, is the concept of just transition. So it's the concept of we persuading the energy transition, but not leaving anyone behind. And in Latin America and in Brazil, we have a lot of climate vulnerability that is directly linked to inequality and to the social aspect of the region and of the country. So I'd like to hear a little bit of your views on how can we do and how can we escalate a just transition here in the region.
Well, a just transition is essential, and a just transition obviously means one that doesn't just focus on the wealthy and actually brings everyone into the circle of profitability and prosperity. And we have seen too much inequality around the world, and fossil fuels have contributed to that, but it's far from the only cause. But we have located Just Climate, our business, right here in Sao Paulo, and we named it Just Climate partly because that word just comes from justice and is the same as what we're looking for in the just transition. So yes, it's really important. And the widely distributed sources of electricity, like solar, are inherently more accessible to low-income families. We're seeing in much of the world low-income families putting solar panels on with inverters without even connecting to the grid. In parts of Pakistan now, it's common for a bride's dowry to be 3 panels and an inverter as part of the bridal dowry. We're seeing an incredible expansion in access to energy for lower income populations. I was just in East Africa, in Nairobi, where I saw a fantastic expansion of widely distributed solar, electric motorbikes taking over from the polluting petrol-powered bikes. So this is an important part of this energy transition. It has to be just.
And what is the role of, for example, generation of Just Climate and of entrepreneurs and the governments can play here in Brazil so that we can ensure that the energy transition includes everyone?
Well, that's what our focus is, and when we say just climate, we mean focused on climate, but a just transition is our goal. And it's another example of why Brazil is now emerging as the place where this new concept is coming to fruition. My partner, Edu, says if you're interested in the fashion business, you go to Paris. If you're interested in nature-based investing to solve the climate crisis, you go to Brazil. This is where it is happening. You have an abundance of resources, hydropower, solar, forest, biodiversity, and business experience and investing expertise. That's why we are locating here.
Will you have an office in Faria Lima? So I think we will see each other very, very, very much.
And are you going to be in Berlin with us?
We're not sure yet.
Okay, all right.
I think it depends. We also have in Brazil this year the PRI in person, which is the Principles for Responsible Investment. It's a huge organization that unites investment managers, assets, and it will be also hosted in Brazil. It will be in São Paulo just 2 weeks before COP30. So it's an interesting year for Brazil to be in Brazil when we talk about the climate.
And may I say again, next month in Rio, I also chair the Climate Reality Project. There are some veterans who've been through some of the previous 4 trainings that I have had here. We are going to have a training for anyone who wants to come and learn the latest science on the causes of the climate crisis, the solutions to the climate crisis, the networks of people who are working together in business and in civil society to solve the climate crisis. You can sign up at climatereality.org.
That's perfect. It will be in Rio next month.
Yes.
Great. So this is Mr. Al Gore's invite for everyone here to participate. So time flies. We only have 6 minutes left. And I think I would like to add a last question on your documentaries. So both The Inconvenient Truth that was launched in 2006, and then the sequel, The Inconvenient Sequel. You were awarded the Oscar for these documentaries, and they were really important to raise global awareness on the climate agenda and on the climate urgency. So I think it's for anyone that still didn't watch it, I think it would be nice and important to watch both the documentaries. But since 2006, the global conversation on climate has evolved. And not just the conversation, but the opportunity itself has also evolved. So would you say we are moving from a point of, we are turning from an inconvenient truth to an unmissable opportunity ahead?
I like your phrase, from an inconvenient truth to an unmissable opportunity. I think that's very, very well put. The future of investing is sustainable investing, in my opinion. We are now 8 billion people on this earth. We rely still on fossil fuels for 80% of our energy. And so we're using the sky as an open sewer. We have an opportunity to make profits in changing that pattern, to stop using the sky as an open sewer and instead have a just transition that takes renewable energy and business models that respect the earth and produce sustainable profits. Brazil is the place where these new business models are being pioneered. They're already profitable. Investing is difficult. You and your colleagues know this, as everyone does. But if you do the research and you work hard and you have the right partners, then the opportunities now are unmissable, because the world is making this transition toward a sustainable future. We have no choice. And luckily, the entrepreneurs and scientists and engineers are finding ways that are better for us than in the past. You know, years ago, there was an energy minister in Saudi Arabia, an oil minister, who told the king, he said, "We better watch out in the future." He said, "Remember, the Stone Age didn't end because of a shortage of stones. It ended because something better came along." Well, now the fossil fuel age is going to end not because of a shortage of fossil fuels, but because something better has come along. We have clean energy that's pollution-free and is now cheaper by far than the old dirty polluting forms of energy. And so it's an unmissable opportunity to try to be part of the solution for this inconvenient truth.
So I think something that you said that I'll keep in mind is the future of investment is sustainable investing. I think this is a really powerful message. Just your final words to this audience, what would you tell them and on all the investors interested in being a part of this next chapter and of this unmissable opportunity ahead?
Well, we look forward, my colleagues and partners and I look forward to meeting with as many of you as are interested in following up. I'm so impressed with the size of this gathering. I've heard about XPIA, but it's the first time I've had the privilege of being here in person. So thank you very much. You know, 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago, when I was a young student, I had the unexpected opportunity to meet this professor who was one of the leading climate scientists of all time. I never expected that my life would be focused on this. But it's a challenge that once you pick it up, you can't just put it down. And now I've had the great privilege and opportunity of working with great partners to address it in the business sector as well. Here's what I've learned over all these years. We have what we need to solve this crisis and to prosper as we address the crisis. We have the technologies. We have everything we need to make this transition. We have the commitment of the people who want to see a bright future for their own families. You're building a family. God bless you and your family. So exciting. And everyone who loves their children and grandchildren wants to feel like they're making the world a better place for them. And that's what Generation Investment Management aspires to do. And we work hard every day, and we would love to work with you on it. There is one resource that people worry we may not have in sufficient quantity, and that is the political will to make the right choices. I had a teacher who, when I was a child, who said we face the same choice in life over and over again. It's the choice between the hard right and the easy wrong. We now have a choice between the hard right and the easy wrong. to make a future that is worthy of your family and mine and all the families represented here and in Brazil and worldwide, or to make the wrong choice, to just look the other way with the pollution that is destroying so many lives. We have the technology, we have the resources. Do we have enough political will? Here's what I always ask people to remember. Political will is itself a renewable resource, and the generation of those of us alive today have an obligation to renew political will to save the future. And in COP30, in Brazil, in Belém, and in the communities of Brazil, this is the place where the world, I hope, will renew its commitment to make the right choice, to renew political will, and to build a sustainable future. Thank you to everyone at XP for having me here in this meeting. Obrigado.
So thank you very much, Mr. Gore. I think it was a very thought-provoking, and you left a last long impression on all of us here. I wish even more success for Generation now that you're here, based in Brazil. On behalf of XP, I would just like to reinforce that we are open for any partnership and collaboration moving forward. Thank you very much for your presence. Have a safe journey back home, and thank you all for bearing with us through this panel. Thank you.
Obrigado. Obrigado. Good job.
So amazing. Thank you very much. Mamãe, você arrasou, mamãe. Arrasaram. Muito obrigada. Nossa, que aula. Jesus. Cabeça já fica, ó, logo de cara. Cabeça não para.
Oi, Glenda.
Ô, Furla.
Eu quebrei o protocolo, eu fico com saudade de você, já fui entrando. São 15
Tudo
anos
bem.
de expert.
Mas tá bom. Você
E todo
aqui
ano a gente está aqui.
Todo ano.
Então aí eu me senti à vontade de entrar junto com
Mas
você.
que bom. Então que bom que você está aqui.
O que você mais gostou da palestra do Al Gore?
Não, peraí, eu gostei dele mostrar o protagonismo brasileiro nesse assunto que é mundial. Olha a importância do Brasil para o mundo, para as transformações, para as próximas gerações.
Quando você pensa no mundo, assim, tecnologia, o que você pensa? Tecnologia, onde você vai?
Eu vou para a inteligência artificial.
Vale do Silício.
Tá. Para onde eu vou, desculpa, Vale do Silício.
Quando você pensa assim, em países que têm muito